Welcome to Grid Talk. My name is George Howson, and today we are here to discuss some of the biggest talking points ahead of the 2025 Formula One season. Joining me today, we have Grid Talk co host Owain Medford
Hello.
and Sophia Richmond,
Hi.
and Formula One journalist and F1 Chronicle co founder Tiagi.
Hi guys, good to be back.
Good to have you back, Dev. Good to be back for 2025 for our first regular show of the year as well. But before we get into the episode, it's sponsor time. Bet Online continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, Bet Online provides you with all the action and the ability to watch games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, and college basketball to NHL and the UFC. Head over to Bet Online today and don't forget to use the promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, the game starts here. And where we're going to start today is probably with something that is very controversial at the moment, something that has come out literally a few days ago. It's nothing new in the sense of the FIA and the president of the FIA wanting to clamp down on blue language during the official sessions of Formula One, but I'm going to come to everybody for this because I know everybody's got thoughts on it. But I mean, Owain, I'll start with you. This is taking things to a whole new level now because it is not only limiting what the drivers can say in terms of things being explicit, it's also limiting what drivers can say in terms of criticizing anything to do with the sport's governing body.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the criticism, I'm not quite up to date on whether it's during, like, actually during the recorded sessions, race sessions and practice sessions, or whether it's in press conferences. If it's in press conferences, I think that's fair game. I think that's fair enough in some ways. But to me, you've got to remember that this is a working environment. If it's during the sessions, I don't think you can expect there not to be swearing or passionate, or blue language of any kind. Anyone who's worked, if you've worked in a garage or been around a garage, there's a term, mechanics English, that some of the foreign drivers, when they come over to go through the lower formula, that's what they learn, and there's a reason for that, and it's because it's a working environment, and that's the kind of language that gets used. Not only is it that, it's a high pressure, adrenaline filled environment. I don't think it's reasonable to expect people not to swear when anything happens. I mean, that's absolutely going to happen if it's in press conferences and where it's more likely to be advertised or anything like that. I think that's a little bit different. What I have a bigger issue with is the criticism ban, and against a sort of backdrop of what we're seeing as a lurch to authoritarianism in the sort of it's the arguably the world's greatest superpower. I think it echoes it rather horrifyingly. I wish I had a more eloquent way to say that, but if we didn't have criticism of the FIA, if we didn't have criticism of all the processes and procedures within Formula One, I can see it very likely that if we'd never had that back in the 60s and 70s, then we still have drivers, dying for a year or something like that. It's ridiculous to me that an organisation believes it is above reproach, because that's essentially what it's saying. And I think it's, I think this has come from the top, from what we can tell of the FIA. And I don't like where that leads. We've seen it before with, was it Balestri, the former head of the FIA? Obviously, he ran it in a particular way that not many people were happy with, and I think we've had brighter days in the FIA. I mean, say what you want about Max Mosley and Jean Todt, but I think they were always, particularly Max Mosley, they were very, very good at taking on board criticism and changing things for the better, and have moved Formula One from a sport that was very dangerous to a sport that that we expect people to be able to walk away from, and things got better year over year. And now I see where I basically see that it's getting to a point where the FIA believes it can do no wrong, and we have seen in the last 5 years that it has done a lot of wrong. It has faltered many a time, and to say no, we don't want to hear this criticism, smacks of someone who only wants to hear yes men and people who agree with them, and that's not the road to hell is paved. You know, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. That's the road to hell is paved with your fingers in your ears, running towards it, saying it's warmer and I'm a bit cold.
It is so scary this. I mean the actual regulation when it comes to the criticism thing. I mean the swearing thing is relative small fry in my opinion compared to the criticism thing here. The actual regulation that they've put forward here is the forbidding of any words, deeds, or writings that have caused moral injury or loss to the FIA, its bodies, its members, or its executive officers, and more generally on the interest of motorsport and of the values defended by the FIA. That is unbelievably open-ended, and the bans that these guys can get. And this isn't just for the drivers. This isn't just for F1. This is for all top level FIA motorsport series. So World Endurance Championship, World Rally Championship. This affects them. This also affects team personnel. So the team principals, the race engineers, anybody. And, drivers can, in theory, get a ban of up to 1 month for breaching these regulations, which could be 3, 4 races. It is an absolutely terrible state of affairs. And apparently this was voted in as well without key stakeholders here. There were no driver representatives there. This was done very cloak and dagger with an online meeting, apparently. I mean, this is the thing, Dev. We love Formula One. We speak about Formula One. We write about Formula One. We're talking about Formula One now for a podcast. And we sing its praises when it's good and we criticize it when it's wrong. And we should be able to do that. But not allowing people actually inside the sport to do that, I think is extremely dangerous. Not only for what I just spoke about, also what Owain was saying from a safety aspect as well. If drivers say, "Oh well, the barrier wasn't good enough, the marshals didn't arrive fast enough," things like that. Is that criticism? Is that going to get them punished for speaking out?
I think, George, it's a fairly contentious issue. What the FIA are implying here, and quite directly rather, is that anything which is deemed to be offensive, insulting, coarse, rude, or abusive, or so on and so forth, is just not allowed. Now, sometimes drivers, more often than not, they are they're roughly handled for no fault of their own by the opposite numbers in the other teams and cars. And we saw with the likes of Nikita Mazepin, for example, drivers who would spin on more occasions than keep the wheels of the car on the track and then causing skirmishes and accidents. So a lot of things can actually happen at the heat of the moment. You don't necessarily mean or imply to be harsh or insult an organization, an institute, or the other driver, but then words come out at the heat of the moment. It doesn't mean that you actually have a very strong intent behind it, or you're being deliberate in that regard. So, when you hear a preeminent and esteemed institutions such as the FIA going ahead and calling in for this kind of a rule to be accepted and become the norm, I think it's very draconian in its construct. I would say that's the only adjective that comes into my mind, and I'm not sure whether the 20 drivers in the grid would be able to comply with that. So it would be, what this does effectively is that it makes an already controversy fueled sport even more controversial in what's to follow in 2025. And the very fact that you cannot level a point of criticism against the institution called the FIA, to me that's that just sounds like a very morbid idea. I mean, I can have a different point of view. I may not necessarily. So, what has the French philosopher Voltaire said? I may not agree with you, but I shall defend to death your right to say it. It seems that we've really learned nothing. I mean, even if we were to extract a minuscule virtue from that, it's a very poignant, it's a very deep thought in there. And I'm not really sure what luminaries like Stefano Domenicali and Ross Brawn are up to when under their. So they're also as much a part of this decision, it means, right, as the main man out there, the sheikh, the big guy from the Middle East. But I mean, it's just it's really it's making the sport ludicrous, and there will be instances where for now the drivers association hasn't really said anything. They haven't really put forward a particular point of view. But I think as the season begins and then more races unfold, they will realize that this is like a damning blow to what is an essential right, to have a critical point of view towards something and then not to be able to express it. I mean, that's basically just bottlenecking yourself up. So I don't think it's 100% good news.
I mean, it's 100% bad news in my opinion. I mean, very,
Yeah.
very well put there, Dev. I mean, to think that they're above criticism, to completely annihilate their free speech like that,
Right.
it is absolutely terrible. I mean, yeah, to say that you can't do this, you can't do that like that, it's, I mean, the GPDA hasn't responded to this yet. The drivers haven't responded to this yet. But if you remember earlier in the season, Sophia, obviously the drivers did write to the FIA after Max got his community service. I mean, the criminal punishment for swearing in a press conference, basically saying we don't want to be treated like children, where adults, there's a difference between trying to cause offense and just generally swearing. There's a big difference in that. And they received no response. This almost feels like the response of the FIA.
For sure. I mean, again, I agree. Cursing and swearing in press conferences, yes, like I agree, a punishment of some sort. But in the heat of the moment, if there's an accident, if there was a mistake, like just watching the Daytona just now, there was a comment being made by one of the drivers, and one commentator was profusely apologizing. Then the other one was like, that's no mistake. But it's in the heat of the moment, like as well. If you look outside the sport and look at other sports who are mic'd up, you hear cursing all the time. You hear it in the news, you hear it in music. Like, there's no way around it. And also, how are they going to monitor cursing in other languages as well? Are they going to have translators monitoring what's being said as well? Like, obviously, English is kind of the spoken language within the sport, but at the same time, they'll start cursing in French and nobody's going to bat an eye unless you speak French. Like, how are they going to monitor it as well? The big thing as well, which is another one of the conducts, is the general making and displaying of political, religious, and personal statements or comments, notably in violation with the FIA. So, We Race is one. Sebastian Vettel about global warming. Even looking at F1 Academy and the criticism of why we don't have female drivers coming up the ranks. Like, how are they going to monitor that? And also, as well, political. You had Donald Trump twice in the paddock and shaking hands with the president of the FIA. So, how are they going to monitor it? It's very much a thin line. I understand some things condoning, yes, should not be possible. It should not happen. But they're being very selective. And like Dev said, they're looking for yes man. And that's going to be quite difficult. And again, looking at it, it's not within a year, it's a 2-year period for the second and third offense as well. So, how does that happen? Like, if a driver, for example, or maybe not even a driver, say a mechanic curses and that's like the second offense, and they have a driver for the next season, does that mean that that driver's not going to drive for the first month? How is that going to time the 1 month ban? Hopefully, aim for the summer break or the winter break, I guess, because it wouldn't have that much of an impact compared to when you have the double and triple headers. They're being so selective in how the doing it, and also the wording as well. It's literally the FIA against the world, which that's not how sports are growing. That's not how you're meant to provide safety, provide inclusion. Like, we see all right now in the news, like what's happening with people speaking the different viewpoints as well and being ostracized. It just does not make sense. And I think, because they've just blanketed out a table without any real discussions, it's going to be interesting the first, even in testing as well, and like looking at the interviews when the drivers are going to start coming back probably in the next couple of weeks as well. Like, it's been very quiet, but that first 2 months are going to be absolutely chaotic, because how are they interpreting words as well? So like, obviously Dev just said, like, is that a curse word? Like, some people might say it is. Like, how, or like frick. Like, there's so many different things. Or, oh God, how are they going to monitor all these different challenges and different loopholes as well for it? I'm not a fan. It's going to limit and not have a freedom of speech, which is definitely needed in the sport and for the sport to grow and to get fans as well, because fans are going to be criticized no matter what they say online as well. And like, if somebody agrees, or God forbid, somebody likes a status that has something that's criticizing the FIA, will they get penalized as well? Like, there's just so many different avenues that the FIA are not understanding or not explaining to us, to the public. And again, without the drivers getting involved as well in that conversation, that also makes it like they don't care about the drivers at all. Not just in F1, but obviously in endurance, what else? Rally, all the sports under the FIA governing body as well. Like, everyone's been talking about it, but there's been no kind of understanding and discussion about it because they can't. So it's going to be interesting these next couple months, and hopefully they reverse it or they lower the offenses to make it more into like specific details, because there's so many different loopholes that people can find.
Yeah, like you said, it's completely open-ended, and it's one of the things you hope that no one's ever going to get punished with. But we've already seen drivers be punished with this in the case of, Max Verstappen and all that. So, and that was a more arguably lenient regulations that we had last year for this. Yeah, it's absolutely awful. It really, really is. And if you guys want to get your viewpoints across, head over to our social medias, where at Grid Talk UK, everywhere that you find the @ symbol. We want to hear what you guys have to say about this as well. I did a video a while ago for the F1 Chronicle going over this, and a lot of people are saying that the F1 should break away from the FIA and just do their own thing. And I understand the sentiment. I don't think it ever happened for a lot of different reasons, but it is really bad. I can see why they would be tempted to at least look into that, and why the threats of that, which we've not seen, thankfully, for a long, long time, may well come back.
And George, just there's just one more point in this, which we didn't discuss. So besides the 1 month ban, drivers actually risk facing reduction or cancellation in championship points.
Yeah.
So on a particular weekend, there could also be a sprint race, remember, besides there being a triple header. So that's why I said it's a damning blow. So yeah, just that thought.
No, you're absolutely right. Imagine if a driver loses the world championship for swearing in a press conference. It's possible now. It's possible. Go on away.
Or worse, for speaking up about a safety issue that the FIA doesn't deem necessary to talk about, and that's ridiculous.
Yeah, just when they don't do podium interviews now, actually on the podium, but just dragging them off the podium for swearing while they're celebrating. I mean, I'm laughing, but honestly, you want to cry almost at this. It's yeah, like I said, want to hear your guys' thoughts as well. We've gone on about this for quite some time now. But yeah, from the overwhelming negative to something that was a real positive. I mean, that was a real hammer blow, that seeing that regulation change. But a few days before that, Wayne, we saw Lewis Hamilton in red overalls, driving for Ferrari for the first time in his first test. I mean, the question I kind of want to ask, really, I mean, I almost feel used to it now. We've shared the pictures between ourselves on our little friends group and everything. But it's a dream move in a sense. The most successful driver joining the most successful team, the most historic team. But my question is this going to work out for Hamilton? I know it's impossible to say for sure, but it's one of them moves where it's like, if it doesn't end in a world championship, it almost feels a bit disappointing. But Hamilton has a certain Angela Cullen who's come back to help him out this year, so that should help.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you don't know, Angela Cullen was sort of, Lewis Hamilton's sort of physio, but also, I guess, assistant would be the best sort of maybe word, but clearly does a lot, and I don't think it would be an overreach to say that she's instrumental in his success at Mercedes. I can't quite remember when she joined, but obviously it's something we got used to, and honestly, I was sad to see her go. Obviously, it was a tumultuous period for Lewis, and it makes me feel like they ended on good terms, and that there was some other reason that she wasn't able to, assist Lewis in the last couple of years. But I'm glad she's back. And I think it seems that everything's coming into place. I don't really want to. When you say it's either a dream move or a sort of a nightmare. I mean that's Ferrari. I mean they're kind of an all or nothing team really in that way. But I think that's some of the allure. Like that's some of the luster of it. Like there's something about it's almost a bit Italian soap opera with the Italian team. And I just hope it works out. Obviously, I'd like to see a Formula One. Obviously, I'd like to see a Formula One World Championship from Hamilton in Ferrari, I think that would turn, obviously a multiple world champion into a legend at that point. And I don't think that would be overstating it whatsoever. I think Hamilton's. I'm glad to see that he's been in the car. They've already got Hamilton in the. I believe it's the 2023 car. That's the earliest car allowed under the regulations, and it's only for a short period of time. And even though it's a cold day with academy tyres at Fiorano, which there's loads of benchmarks that that Hamilton won't have, but the fact that he's been in the car. It means that sort of a champion such as he is, and he's been widely reported at Mercedes to be very, very quick at gaining learning and gaining information from when driving the car at Mercedes in practice sessions. And I think that one thing he will learn is sort of the differences between how he's got to drive the Mercedes and how he had to drive the Mercedes and how he was driving and how he can drive the Ferrari, because the DNA is still probably fairly similar at this point, and that this is the last year of the regulation, so this is kind of where it's going to end up, and I think that's going to help. So he's got that comparison point. I mean, obviously he's a champion, so he'll be able to extract the best from it that he can. You put Lewis Hamilton in a car and he will drive the wheels off of it. But I think we've got the feeling that everything's sort of coming together, and if Ferrari gets things right. I think Lewis, in some ways, is the best placed of the grid right now. If we've got Red Bull, Ferrari, maybe Mercedes, hopefully Mercedes comes back to the fore. If we've got all four teams, including McLaren, fighting. I think the one thing that Lewis has over everything else is that he's seen out championship after championship with a lot of pressure against a lot of people. We've got to remember that he's got 10 years on some of the other drivers, and that experience of being in championship fights for almost half his career, I think would make the difference, and I think that could bring us to sort of the dream of a Lewis Hamilton World Championship at Ferrari.
Yeah, it's very exciting times for Ferrari fans, very exciting times for Lewis Hamilton fans as well. Obviously, he's going for that 8th title, and if he did it for the Great Red Team itself, that is how you would write it. That is how the perfect end to his career would be, really, at that point. And Dev, he certainly looks the part. I mean, we've seen the pictures of him outside of Enzo Ferrari's old house. I will admit, the first time I saw him in Ferrari overalls, I thought it was Photoshop till I realised that was actually on his Facebook page. But seeing him out there with the number 44 of the 2023 car at Fiorano, with all the fans gathered on the banks of the track, and it's absolutely pouring down with rain. The hotels were all booked up in the area. I think he's going for another test soon at Mugello or somewhere like that as well. So he's certainly looking the part. But obviously, like we've spoke about before, he's going to have a very competent teammate in the form of Charles Leclerc, a guy who has been with Ferrari really for probably 15 years or so, but he's actually been in the car since 2019, I think was his first year at Ferrari. So it's going to be a challenging year, but like Owain said, if anybody's got the most experience of seeing out championships, it's Sir Lewis.
Yeah, I think easily the most dominant and the most exciting narrative of the 2025 season, Sir Lewis Hamilton finally moving to Ferrari, something, which is as puzzling as it is exciting, because I actually, as an F1 fan, never thought that he would actually, slip into the red racing overalls and maybe make the creation of the red letter day at Ferrari is number one ambition from the looks of it, where it stands at the moment. But as Owen rightly said a few minutes earlier, that Ferrari are an all or nothing team. So there's never a dearth of investment from their side, but it's always the results on which they fall short. And maybe I think what they've done definitely is that they have once again put together a very, very strong driver pairing out there. Clearly the most successful outfit in the history of Formula One, with the most successful driver, as also the greatest, in my view. The greatest living driver. But I think, the signs are ominous, because what Ferrari have on the one hand is this enormous pressure of expectations, which is never going to be easy, because, the last they ever won a constructors trophy, I believe, was back in 2008, a constructors title. So it's been a decade and a half. So I think the number one aim would be to have both the titles this year. But is it going to happen? Will it actually happen? And how soon can Hamilton actually deliver race wins? And how familiar, just how long he takes to get familiar in what should hopefully be a cracker of a race car forms also a very interesting narrative. So, by the looks of it and on the paper, definitely this is the most exciting and most promising narrative of the 2025 Formula One season. But will it be all victory and glory in red for Ferrari? We are really at some distance from calling a reasonable hunch, but there is no doubt about the phenomena that Sir Lewis Hamilton is. All the experience in the world is with him. Ferrari have at their disposal a menacingly talented driver. I mean, he doesn't have anything left to prove to anyone. And I'm just reminded of that epic 2028 Monza Grand Prix where Kimi took pole and Hamilton actually in the final moments of it snatched the lead again. And something very exciting happened in the aftermath of the race. There was a lot of praise that came from the Ferrari quarters to Lewis Hamilton. And Lewis Hamilton made light work of it. And he said in lighter vein that is Ferrari actually praising me? I never thought such a thing would actually happen. So, well, such a thing would actually happen. Lewis Hamilton is in Ferrari. So, expect the unexpected is often the invisible rule of thumb of Formula One. Now that it has happened, it should rightly fetch glory for Ferrari. But it's all to play for, I would say. Easily the most dominant narrative this year.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a match made in heaven, really. It was, his time at Mercedes was very, very successful, but it very much seemed like it was kind of petering out. He'd been there for 12 years, something like that, a long, long time. So, to be there at any team for that long is a very long time. And yeah, I'm really excited to see it. Ferrari, for me, ended the 2024 season at least on a par with McLaren in terms of the pace of the car, and they almost won the constructors. So we'll see if they can get the first championship of any kind since 2008 this year. But they'll face stiff competition not only from McLaren but also from Red Bull, Sophia. And there's been some changes at Red Bull since I believe we last did our podcast. Of course, Sergio Perez has been sacked from his role as the second driver at Red Bull. He's been replaced by Liam Lawson to compete in his first full season as Max Verstappen's teammate. Oh boy, I mean, it's good. I'm glad he's got the promotion, but that is a trial by fire. That is a tough one potentially there. And we've also got Isaac Hadjar, who steps up from Formula 2 runner-up to go to the newly renamed Racing Bulls, the second team of Red Bull, and he won't have an easy time either, in my opinion. He's got Yuki Tsunoda for a teammate too, and of course you would rightfully say, "Oh, give them time. They're both effectively rookies," but Red Bull doesn't like doing that usually.
No, definitely put them in the deep end. I mean, I feel for Yuki more than anything else because he kept on saying in press conferences, and it was looking like when it was announced that Checo was going to be leaving, that Yuki was going to step up. To me, I felt like that was probably the right decision for Yuki to step up. He's had the longest time working with the teams in F1. Obviously, Liam Lawson has had some great opportunities, some great races and everything, but consistently, you would think that you would put the next qualified driver to the top team, which would have been Yuki. So I feel for him. It's going to be interesting to see as well. As mentioned, for Liam Lawson, that's a heavy season to come into. It's the same, obviously, with Kimi going into Mercedes as well for first full season. It's going to be a lot of pressure to see as well, especially for Liam having Max as a teammate and the reigning champion and all that. But going over to Racing Bulls as well, Isaac Hadjar, it makes sense. If you look at the drivers, the junior drivers in Formula 2, it's Isaac Hadjar, Pepe Marti, and Oliver Goethe. The three that were in Formula 2 for the season. Out of those three, he is the best decision. But they also had other ones like Arvid Lindblad, who's now going to be racing in Formula 2, and Tim Tramitz, I believe, has moved up as well to Formula 2 or is retaining for another Formula 3 season. So out of the junior drivers, it does make sense. I mean, there was also rumors that Owasa, who used to race in F2 and F3, he is now in Super Formula and doing very well in Super Formula, was going to be racing with in Racing Bulls. It would have been an all Japanese team as well, which would have been quite an interesting thing to see as well, pairing with Yuki. But it's going to be with Isaac, he is obviously the runner up. He's had some good races. He is a very forceful, I will say, driver when it comes to racing. In Formula 2 and Formula 3. I understand the decision, but I mean, I don't know how he's gonna mesh. And obviously now with these new rules and the new swearings and criticizing, he's very much a person who likes to comment and criticize on things on track and off track. So I definitely will be interested to see how he is able to kind of rein it in, both on radio and in interviews as well. But it'll be quite interesting to see. And who knows, they might do another shakeup and move drivers around. It's not the first time Red Bull's done that, or any team per se as well. Obviously, the rumor with Alpine and everything changing, throwing into that conversation as well. So I'm excited to see the first couple of months. And I think by then they'll probably have their feet on the ground and kind of understand what is needed for the teams. But very interesting to see.
It is, yeah. It's not a surprise really that Tsunoda wasn't promoted. I mean, Marco was basically saying for a long, long time that he's a hothead. He's not worthy of that. He's too, he's too inconsistent and all this, and fairly unfounded criticisms in my opinion. But it's not a surprise that they chose Lawson over him. But yeah, a guy going into Red Bull after half a season, and last time we saw that was Alex Albon, and didn't really work out particularly well, unfortunately. Despite Albon proving, in my opinion, that he's a very talented driver, it takes a lot more than talent to succeed at Red Bull, unfortunately. So we'll see what happens with both of those. Never a dull moment at the Red Bull organization. You can't accuse them of that. Another interesting move that's obviously been on the cards for a very long time is Adrian Newey going to Aston Martin. Owain, he starts his new role as a chief technical officer or something like that, but he's also effectively going to be designing the car too. He officially begins work in March. Now, I've seen some quotes coming out of Aston Martin saying that basically from April onwards, Adrian Newey is going to be working exclusively on the 2026 car. Fernando Alonso has come out in the media and basically said that Aston Martin aren't going to win anything this year. So it is truly a transitional year for Aston Martin, a transitional year for Formula One as a whole, too, as we go towards those in 2026. But what can we expect from Aston Martin this year? Are they just managing expectations? Do you think Adrian Newey might have a little bit of influence on this car and able to get them from, in again, Alonso's words, from the 9th fastest car on the grid to a bit higher?
To be honest with you, I don't see any benefit in Aston Martin using Newey's considerable sort of knowledge of the car. It's going to take him a while it would take him a while to understand the car. I mean, obviously he knows what he's doing and he knows, he knows what he's looking at, and they'd be able to give him a jump start of their philosophy and all the data points and everything and the idea of what they're doing. But you'd still have to get up to speed. And I think given that they know that this year is not going to be, you can't turn a Formula One team around in a month or two. And 2026 is their biggest opportunity with their works Honda power that they're going to have as well in that year to make their way towards the front. And I personally believe that I don't think they'll even look at it. I don't think he'll honestly look at all at the current car beyond sort of understanding, all right, what can we transition? And apart from that, bearing in mind that it's basically going to be all new, immediately start working on that on the 2026 car, because it's very clearly we've seen time and time again in Formula One, your energy is better spent on coming towards the end of a regulations. That's when you have the biggest opportunity to make up ground and to get to the front. I mean, we saw it with it's almost the equivalent of an F1 safety car restart is a regulation change, and we've got two coming at once. Honda is, I don't think they've ever fully gone away really from Formula One in that way, even though they sort of announced a hiatus sort of thing. But they're coming back in as a works supplier to Aston Martin. So you have to believe that they'll this time be much more competitive with the new engine formula. For various reasons, but I think Adrian Newey won't even, like I say, won't even take a look at the 2025 car. There's no point; it's already baked in. You really on this one, it's sort of take your lumps and go flat out on the 2026 car. I know that didn't work out for BMW maybe in 2008 and 9, but I think in this way, it's going to be better, and they've got Andy Cowell coming in as team principal, also to work with, and Cowell's well known to be. I can't think of the word. He's good. He's really good. He was really good at Mercedes. Obviously, it didn't work quite so well with him as I think it was sort of chief technical officer at Mercedes, but in the team principal role, with the kind of long-term thinking that he was apparently well known for at Mercedes, I think it's sort of all coming together. Aston Martin are putting themselves in a place where, they bought the team, it wasn't 5 years ago. Well, actually, no, it would be, so it was getting on for 5 years ago. And it takes that sort of time to turn things around. They've got the new facilities, they've got the right people in the right places, and they need to use them to the best of their ability. And 2026 is where they're aiming, not 2025.
Yeah, I think you're right there, and it makes perfect sense as well. If all the effort you put into the 25 car is effectively going to be for nothing in a year's time, because the cars are just completely changing. So 5-star ambitions from Aston Martin, but at the moment a bit of a 1-star car. However, if you're enjoying this podcast and you want to leave us a 5-star review, you can head over to Apple Music, iTunes, Spotify, all that good stuff. If you want to leave us a positive review, I really would appreciate that, of course. And we'll read out the other platforms where we are available as well at the end of the show, which we're going to talk through after we give a mention to a bit of a landmark as well for Formula One heading into this season, Sophia. We've got Laura Mueller, I hope I'm pronouncing correctly there. She's becoming the first ever female race engineer in Formula One for Esteban Ocon as he joins Haas for the season. How much of a landmark is this for the sport?
For sure. I mean, we're starting to see obviously females in higher positions. Look at Hannah Schmitz at Red Bull. So being the first as well, it's paving the way. Looking at her background as well, she worked in Formula Renault. She was working with Lucas di Grassi, was part of World Endurance, European Le Mans, DTM. Like, she has an extensive background, starting off as a data analysis, moving into engineer, and then she joined Haas back in 2022 as a performance engineer, working with the team, and now obviously moved up. Looking at the interviews as well, with team principals, it looks like it's a very good relationship between her and Esteban. Apparently they have the same characteristics. They're both driven, and I think it'll be great to see as well for it. I'm hoping that this also gives more opportunities for people to look at females in other positions, because like I said, we've not seen an engineer as a female ever in F1. And it kind of shows that anybody can kind of do it. Obviously, we've seen the extent of how F1 Academy has kind of shaped the narrative about females in a male-dominated positions as well. So I'm really excited to see. I'm hoping things don't get crucified. Again, we can go back to the comments about FIA and all of that and criticism, just find people in that kind of sense. But I'm really excited to see. It'll be nice to hear a female voice on the team radios as well. Nice little change of scenery for it. So, and with Haas as well, like, they are going to be striving. Like, they've had some good opportunities over the last couple of seasons in race wins, but like good points needed as well. So I'm expecting quite a lot, actually, I think, from Haas. I think it'll be a good breath of fresh air. They've done other changes as well within the organization as well. They've had people leave, a lot of internal promotions as well. So I think they're going to be shaping up for a good 2025, and hopefully a 2026 season as well.
Yeah, Haas, without a doubt, one of the most improved teams last season, going from bottom in 2023 to 7th and almost getting 6th. It went for that Alpine double podium in Brazil. They would have got 6th in the constructors. But anyway, massive progress nonetheless. But yeah, those are the main talking points that I wanted to go through in this show. Thanks to everybody for joining me on this. I really do appreciate it as always. Dev, I mentioned in the introduction that you're an F1 journalist and a co-founder of the F1Chronicle.com. Anything you want to plug, anything you want to promote?
I'm saying I might be the co-founder of F1 Chronicle, but you are the face of F1 Chronicle. I'm a huge fan of the consistency of the brilliant videos that you do, George. And if I was one third of the Mr. Consistency that you've become, I call you the George Russell of F1 videos, I think my career would take a leap. But yeah, it's a pleasure to contribute to F1 Chronicle, and thanks to Jared for that. And yeah, that's the only plug-in right now in my career as an F1 journalist.
Fair enough, Dev. I really, really appreciate those kind words as always. Owain, do you want to plug the socials for Grid Talk?
Yeah, so I know you plugged them at the start of the show, but if you'd like to keep up to date with all of our sort of the happenings from Grid Talk, including our thoughts and feelings, or if you just want to interact with us, make sure you talk to us at Grid Talk UK. That's the account you'll find us on all of the social media services with the @ and yeah, keep talking to us.
Yep, keep talking to us here on Grid Talk. As well, if you want to see some more of our shows, of course, you can head over to YouTube, where most of our shows are recorded live. This is not one of them, but when the season gets underway, we'll be reacting to the races about an hour or so after the actual event concludes, I believe is the plan. Our episodes are also available on Amazon Fire, Spotify, Apple Music, Verbal, and Pocket Casts. If you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel yet, there's around 72% of people who view our videos that are not. Please do so. Would really appreciate that. And then you get to find out when we go live and when we post at the first opportunity as well. Just search for F1 Grid Talk for our big back catalogue of shows with previews and reactions to the race results throughout. Races going back all the way to 2019. This is the 7th year that we're doing this. That is incredible. And also incredible is the support that we get from some of our patrons as well on Patreon, including Jared Bradley and Holly Eagle. Thanks for supporting us so much on Patreon. Head over to our Patreon if you want to find out about what exclusive member perks you can get over there as well. And yeah, thanks to my panelists for joining us. Thank you very much for listening to Grid Talk Podcast. Thank you very much for watching the Grid Talk Podcast if you're on one of the video platforms. Of course, this was presented by Bet Online, and we'll see you very soon for some more F1 content right here. Have a good one, guys. See you soon.